How's it going, guys? How are you doing? And welcome to a brand new video tutorial from iPinwis. Today we're gonna learn Node.js from scratch in one single video. So for those of you who are beginners or really want to get into Node.js but not really waste that much of time and just know the basics of Node.js to really quickly get started with it and get started working with servers and APIs and creating all the kind of sample examples or applications that you can do with Node.js. So this is what I'm gonna cover in this video tutorial. We're gonna cover everything from zero to mastering Node.js. Not exactly mastering like be a pro or something like this, just knowing the basics, because in watching this video tutorial, assuming that you know JavaScript, that you've worked as a web developer before, for example with PHP or something, you know what is servers, you know things that related into this particular field of web development, and you know things that help you get into this just by knowing the Node.js API and how it works and all the architectures around Node.js. Because if you've been hearing asynchronous things and synchronous and events loop and so on and so forth, we're going to explain each one of these in this particular video tutorial. So it's going to be quite some long, and we're going to just go first throughout the introduction to Node.js, then we're going to move on into code and exploring the Node.js ecosystem. So starting off with the most important question in this, which is what is Node.js? So basically Node.js is a cross development environment created by Ryan Dayhall in 2009 for an efficient and reliable environment based on JavaScript. And as we all know, Node.js is actually based on JavaScript. From its name, you know that's Node.js, so it looks like a JavaScript library or a JavaScript framework. While it's not just a framework or library, it's a development environment. And what I mean by development environment is just like a close to a programming language where it allows you to interpret, and it has its own compiler, it has its own interpreter, garbage collector, and its own architecture that's running on the kernel. So this is basically what Node.js is. If you still can't quite figure what is all of the things that I'm talking in this section, just keep it up. We're going to explain all of them. Even though you don't understand what I'm trying to say, we're going to move on into the code section and you're going to understand each one of these. So Node.js, of course, uses an event-driven system, non-blocking input and output system model that makes it very lightweight and very efficient, perfect for data-intensive real-time applications that actually can run on cross devices, cross-platform, like Android, Linux, of course, and Windows, or any other device that supports pretty much Node.js. It is of course open source and across runtime environments for developing server-side applications. And the main specific fields of working with Node.js is actually creating servers and more specifically APIs. So this is basically what Node.js is. Now, why would you use Node.js? Some of you might think of as like you are already a web developer, knows for example PHP, and it works for you pretty much fine. You can create servers, you can create websites, platforms and stuff like this, or any other language or any other framework that allows you to do this, for example using Python like Django or Flask, or using Ruby on Rails or anything like that allows you. But you really heard that Node.js is a pretty great, especially right now on 2019, it's a pretty great web development environment that everyone should pretty much works with and enjoy learning. So we're gonna just give you some points why I really like it throughout my journey that I've been using Node.js and creating a lot of applications using Node.js. So it is of course based on JavaScript, which simply means that you're gonna you will be pretty much dealing with JavaScript in the front end when dealing with browser based applications and all the interactions of a front-end application. Plus, you're going to move all this knowledge to Node.js, where Node.js pretty much runs on your backend server and it handles all the different requests and stuff like this. So you are familiar with one language, you can master one language from scratch, and you can work with it on both ways. So this is so far the most important thing when it comes to Node.js. You don't really have to relearn something from scratch and master all its modules or its core architectures and functions and features and all the different things about a specific programming language. Especially something like JavaScript is a pretty interesting programming language. Built-in asynchronous event-driven system. So the event system surrounding Node.js is pretty great actually, and it is of course asynchronous, which means it's gonna be non-blocking, so it allows you to have multiple requests, multiple threads running on the same server and serving multiple users without any problem. So this is the main thing. Also, it runs on a single thread with a non-blocking architecture, and the thing that runs on a single thread in here is actually the events loop, plus it allows you to have a non-blocking architecture. So when you're doing like IO calls or input and output, reading from a file system, or responding to a specific user throughout an API or something like this, there's going to be a non-blocking, so you don't really have to worry about the synchronous nature of an application, because Node.js already has the solution for this particular issues. Also, we've got a large set of packages and modules, so anything you want to do, it's actually ready-made for you through Node.js package repository. Great for creating APIs and data-friendly applications, and most friendly, and the most important thing in here, it has an awesome set of frameworks built around it that allows you to be creative and do applications, create like very high scalable applications in no time. Now let's move on into a little bit more complicated things, is explaining the architecture of the events loop and the asynchronous architecture of Node.js. Now this diagram pretty much shows you how the event loop and how it runs on a single thread, plus when a Node.js server application receives a request, how it does handle this particular request, and then how it sends back the actual response for this particular request that has been received, either from one single user or from multiple users. So in here, on the right side in here, or pretty much the left side, we've got the requests, and there are many requests are coming. The event loop in here is actually just a specific loop. You can imagine it as a while JavaScript loop that keeps running on your main thread, which is just a single thread that's running this particular loop. It keeps receiving the request, and what it does in here, it's just gonna register a callback. So every time it receives a request, for example, a user gonna like tell them or send a request for logging into his account, or something like registering to the account, or specific data he wants to get from the server, like set of images or anything like this. So he sends this request is gonna be registered throughout the event loop on a callback. So he's gonna like specific name, and the callback is gonna be registered like on the actual event loop. So later on, when pretty much the request has been achieved, for example, he wants from a database, he wants to get his data, or he wants to access his account throughout the login page. So we first need to get into the database, find the specific data about this particular user, and make sure that the data actually matches what the request says. If it does match, we're gonna just do like operation complete, like send a success to the event loop back to the main thread or the single thread we're running in here, and of course this is gonna trigger a callback. The callback, what it does, it just like sends back a response to the user where the user actually has been asking for, and not only a single user, as I told you, because we have multiple requests and multiple callbacks have been registered for each request. So each request is gonna be triggered each specific or his specific callback, so everything is going to be accommodated as the following requests. So this is basically how it works, and this, since it runs on a single thread and has like an events architecture, so there's no problem on actually CPU or having any overload or performance failure or anything like that, because everything gonna be running as expected to be. Pretty basic actually in here. You can also have like from file system, or you can do like computation, like I don't know, calculations or something like this. So all of the kind of things can be happening on the event loop. Now we can take now a quick look or a quick overview of how Node.js architecture pretty much operates. Now we've moved off from the actual input and output system, and just like took a quick overview of how Node.js, the whole Node.js development environment pretty much works, and how it accommodates like multiple users sending multiple requests to the specific server that is running on Node.js. So first we've got like in here multiple users, like user 1, user 2, basically just like sending an input and output request, which for example the user 1, he's trying to get access to his images that he's storing on your database. So he sends this request. This request is going to be into the event loop. There we go. This is actually the event loop where it keeps just looping and watching for any events new events pretty much gonna be triggered. So it keeps watching for this. If it does have any new events, it allocates this into the outputs or input and output system, which is a specific system designed for accommodating any input and outputs calls. So depending on the user, he asks for input and outputs, it gets into this, it goes into the operating system, whatever operating system it is, it's gonna support this, like Windows or Linux, most precisely. So it goes into this, into the input and output system. You're gonna have multiple threads. So this is actually the confusing what happens. The input and output system or anything else surrounding Node.js can be pretty much multi-threaded or single-threaded. That really depends on what you're running and what you are embedding with the Node.js application. But the first thing is, the most important thing is the event loop that is always running on a single thread. So no matter what, no matter how, the event loop is going to be still running on a single thread. The other things in here can accommodate multiple requests at the same time throughout the multiple thread architecture without any problems, and you can accommodate, like, goes into the database, grab some data, or even the file system and grab some data and go back and of course send back the response to the user. And not only that, it can just, like, for example, the third user refreshes multiple times, all of this time is going to be registered on the event loop. Not only that, the event loop gonna recognize as the same user, so it doesn't do any overhead or something like this, because it precisely knows this is the same user trying to refresh the page on the server, so it doesn't send multiple requests. It only once, and it's smart enough to know that, and it's gonna work with this pretty fine. Now for the event loop architecture and stuff, it works on the V8 engine, which is a Chrome JavaScript turbine engine, so it works pretty great without any problems in here. And this is the main thing in here about Node.js in architecture. So it's just like a quick thing. I just wanted to recap and give you this architecture. Of course, you can go in and read through this, or more precisely, you can go to Medium or any other blog platform for reading more information about how Node.js pretty much works and how you can accommodate all of different things using Node.js to really understand what it is. So why using Node.js? For popular applications and examples that you can build using Node.js, this is some of the examples that you can probably do, and applications samples that you can create using Node.js. Like IoT or Internet of Things, use it for backend architectures, for creating like servers specifically designed for handling the Internet of Things or any IoT device sending requests, because there's a lot of IoT devices, so you're gonna expect a lot of requests and responses at the same time. Streaming and real-time applications like chat, collaboration applications, or the streaming applications like video applications, for example Netflix or anything like this, they can be really accommodated throughout Node.js really easily. It runs on a single thread, a non-blocking architecture. So yeah, this is one of the things that you should consider as a why, because if you still don't really get how things work, you probably need to take a look on what is a thread, and how it works on a processor, and all the different things behind the scenes of how a CPU actually works and processes data and executes multiple jobs and stuff. The microservices applications, which uses RESTful APIs or even GraphQL, really accommodates the job in here and can be created, of course, using Node.js. Of course, you can build APIs and server infrastructures, and plus anything else doesn't require intensive CPU processing or anything around this. Like data intensive is okay, but CPU isn't that great because it runs on a single thread. It's not really that great, so you just need to keep it away from this. Other than that, you can do anything with Node.js. It's specifically designed for handling APIs and RESTful APIs, in much particular HTTP requests. But yeah, this is pretty much Node.js. Now we can just take a look on which companies or startups, like big companies, uses Node.js behind the scenes, like PayPal, eBay, LinkedIn, Uber, and many other companies and teams, even like small startups, try to use Node.js for this particular jobs and creating their own server structures based on the Node.js. So just a quick thing, just like examples and what you can do with it. Now we can just jump into the code to see what you can actually do with Node.js, learning Node.js from the zero, how to install it, what are the modules and everything behind Node.js to be able to work with it from scratch. So just stay tuned for this. Now we need to go ahead and install Node.js on our machine. So whether you're running Linux, Windows, or even Mac OS X, Node.js actually is available for your platform, and you can easily install it just by going to nodejs.org and whatever language you like in here, English. So just by going into there, you're gonna find automatically going to be detecting that you are running which platform. So in my case, I'm running Windows 64 bits as well. It runs on a 64-bit in here. So you're going to find two versions, at least in my case in here. So you might be watching this video about like 3 months or 4 months later. You're going to find like a newer version coming up in here. So it's just the same thing. It's not going to be a big deal. You can just go ahead and download it. I really advise you to go with the current version, the 11th version, or you can find the recommended version for most users, which has most of the features and the most needed features that you might want to go. But it did install the 11th version and everything is working pretty much fine. So just go ahead, download this. It's going to be downloading an exe or a Microsoft installer package for you, just like 16 megabytes or something, almost 17. After it finishes, just go ahead and click it, install, like next, and there we go. Just normally as installing any other software, and you probably just going to do this the same way. So this is not going to be only installing Node.js. Of course, it's going to be adding the Node.js path to your environments or to your users path, so you can easily from the command line run any Node.js command or run the interpreter of Node.js, as well as also it's going to be installing npm, which stands for Node Package Manager. What is this? This is actually a command line interface or a CLI that allows you to install and manage your Node.js projects. We're going to see this throughout this video tutorial. So let's just go ahead and jump right now to the second thing that we need to install, which is Visual Studio Code. What is Visual Studio Code? Is just basically a really awesome code editor, or to better say, it's like an IDE that is mostly and widely used for web development, but it can be used for any other software engineering field or programming or whatever language you want to use. But most precisely, it is going to be used for web development. In this case, we're going to be using it for Node.js. It also has like an integrated development environment that allows you to debug your Node.js applications and probably other development environments like Node.js. So just go and head into the page code.visualstudio.com. You can download it for Windows. Also, it is cross-platform, Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X. For some of you that knows that this is, or the Electron framework, this is basically built on top of the Electron framework. So that's why it is cross-platform. It has such an incredible performance. So I really advise you just go ahead, or you can just go choose your own code editor just by downloading this. Click download. It's also gonna just download for you a normal MSI installer or an exe file, depending of course on your platform. So just by downloading this, you can go ahead and install it normally, as we did with the Node.js, as you did with any other application, and that's it. So this is pretty much all you need to be taken care of. If you have your own code editor like Atom, or you prefer to use a Notepad C++, you're going to need a little bit of more work to do. That's why I really prefer going with Visual Studio Code. So that's pretty much it. This is all you need, the installation that you need for Node.js, nothing more, nothing less. So we can just go ahead and continue now, from now on our code editor. Now you need to go ahead and open up the VS Code. And once you open it, you're gonna find this is the first welcome page you're gonna face. So the welcome page, it tells you you can open up a file, open up a folder, find the recent files, and so on and so forth. What we really want is just go ahead and click on open up a folder. So the folder is gonna represent our project. So we're gonna create a new folder on our machine, or like in tutorials folder in here, and I'm gonna name this really quick like Node.js application, something like this. So just gonna be like that. I'm gonna open this and I'm gonna say alright, so you can select the folder right now, and it's gonna just go ahead and try to open up our folder that we have selected as the main root folder for our working directory. As you can clearly see, everything is empty. From this side, you will see all of the files and folders that exist and lives inside of your projects. From the other side, in here, the right side, all of your code, and you can edit your code and type in your code, is gonna be right over here. Of course, you're gonna have multiple tabs open up your projects or your files inside of the projects and so on and so forth for editing them. So that's pretty much all you need to know for Visual Studio Code. Now, the first thing you want to do is open up a terminal, because Node.js, you always need to work with terminals. So now what we need is actually initializing a quick project, or first we initialize our Node.js project. So always when working with Node.js or trying to create a brand new Node.js project, you first go ahead and initialize your project using npm. And for that, you need a terminal. You can open up a normal CMD, so you can just type in CMD or any other terminal interpreter that you can use across Windows or Linux or something, and you can just go ahead and use it. But what I like about Visual Studio Code that much is its own integrated terminal. So you can head up in here, terminal, and click terminal, or pretty much new terminal, and it's going to open up a new terminal for you right over here. And in this type, it's going to have your terminal. You can type in commands and receive outputs and debug and do all kind of things, crazy awesome things that you can do throughout a terminal. So now we need to initialize, and I've told you before, once you install Node.js, it might tell you or ask you to restart your computer. So if it does ask you to restart your computer, you can go ahead and install it. It's just basically for, refreshing the path environment for your machine, but nonetheless, it's not really required. All the time is going to work 100% fine without any problems. So you need to just type in npm to make sure that npm has been installed successfully. So just type in this. It might take quite some time once you just start up everything, and you should find this help log gets outputted for you. If it does, then everything is working pretty much fine as expected to be. Now we need to make sure that Node.js also is installed. You can just do node-v for the version, and there we go. We've got version 11.9.0 is actually installed, and you might have like a little bit newest version, but this version is going to do the job for us perfectly. You can also check out the version of npm being installed on your computer, and just by putting the npm-v, and you're going to find everything in here. So now everything looks pretty much fine. Let's go ahead and initialize our project. So I'm going to do npm init, and running the initialize command, just submitting that is going to prompt us with like a couple of questions to initialize our project. And make sure you are actually CD, or you are into the working directory of your project, the main root directory, which is the Node.js application right over here. So to be able to create and initialize your projects, I'm gonna put the package name, gonna leave it the same, the version 1.1.0.0, description simple, node up. We're gonna put an entry point. What do you mean by the entry point is from where the Node.js application is gonna be starting execution. So I'm just gonna put, for example, up.js. So it's gonna be like our first main entry point. Up.js is gonna be created in a second. No test command, no git repository, no keywords. The author in here, you can just put your name. So I'm gonna put my name here as an author, and simply you can put an MIT license or any other license. You can of course type in yes, and there we go. After you type in yes, you're just gonna find a new package.json file has been created on the root directory of your projects. And this is what I meant by initializing a Node.js project. So initializing a Node.js project is basically just creating the package.json that's gonna just tell Node.js that you have got a project that is gonna be running Node.js. So this is basically all it does. If you open up this package.json, you're gonna find a couple of informations concerning your projects, the name of it, the version, and later on you're gonna find dependencies and stuff like this you can add. Also, we're gonna add our own custom script later on. So this is basically how a package.json works and how it does look like. And just by finding this kind of package.json in your project, it means that this is a Node.js project. Now after initializing your project, now let's go and try to create our first hello world script. You've got two choices. You can create a normal JavaScript script, like a file script, and you put all of your code inside of it. Then you can use the Node.js compiler to run the code and execute it. On the other hand, you can go ahead and use directly the Node.js compiler from the terminal. And this is what's called the REPL. So a REPL basically stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. It basically allows you, just gives you like an interaction to run the commands normally as you were running with like interacting with a programming language, like type in your code and it executes it directly for you without just going ahead and creating a new file then executing it. So this is what a REPL is. To run in the REPL, you just need to type in node. This is all you need, that's the command, and you can find just by seeing this right pointing brackets, it just tells you that the REPL has been started for you and you can start typing commands right out of the box. So now we can put whatever command we want, like a normal JavaScript command. We can create a variable. We can just do hello, and I can put like hello world in here. Alright, this is not how you spell hello word, so just by typing hello word in here, and no need for a semicolon. Now we can just access hello, and it gives us that the value inside of this variable is hello word. And we can of course use the console log as you're dealing with a normal JavaScript in the browser or something, if you have ever worked with JavaScript before, because it needs the knowledge of JavaScript. Here we can just type in print as hello, and it's gonna do the job perfectly. Just go ahead and types hello word for us perfectly without any problems, nothing at all. So this is what a REPL is. You can just go ahead and access it from the terminal. If you really want to test something, I don't know, do some kind of test, run something really quick, nothing really complicated or anything, you can just go ahead and use the REPL right from your command line. This is what a REPL is. Now let's go ahead and try to see how you can create a JavaScript script that's pretty much gets executed, or what's called a modular on a Node.js project, and gets executed using the Node.js compiler. Now let's try now to go ahead and create a separate script and try to run it. So under the projects, we can go ahead and create a new file, and let's try to name our file, which is going to be the app.js. So make sure to name it .js, because it's a really important thing to name this, so Node.js, specifically the compiler, can know that this is a JavaScript file and it can execute it normally, as well as your developer, for sharing with other developers throughout your team or something, can they easily understand this. So you should never change the extension of any programming language or specific command line interface project, or any configuration file that has its own specific extension linked to it. So in here, let's just go and try to do I don't know, something like console log or anything. So for example, we can do console .log, and I can put hello word in here, and of course I can go ahead and save this. So make sure to always save that. Now for running this script file, remember the script file is called app.js. You just need to use node, the just type in the command node, then you give it the name of the file that you want to execute, which is in our case app.js. For some reason got failed to leave or something in here, so it doesn't really matter. So we need to give it the name of the file, which is app.js in our case, and make sure you are inside of the working directory for this to work. Node app.js, and there we go. We've got hello world successfully printed us without any problems. So this is how you run a file, really easy without any problems. Just give it node, and you need to give it the file name that you want to run. Then from this file, if you have like a plethora of other files inside of your project, so this is going to represent the entry point. So if you're familiar with C++ or something, it starts executing from one single file. For example, Python, you've got the Python or main.python. It starts executing from there, and you can import the other files that you can be using inside of that, and you can work with it normally as any other programming language. So this is basically the same scenario, the same mechanism that allows it to work with files and import files, and the entry point and stuff like this. So this is how basically it works. Now let's see how you can go ahead and do an automated script and add your own script into the npm. So go ahead and into the pack.json, and under the script objects, you can go ahead and add your own custom script. So here we can add the script, naming it on start. So which means it's gonna start application, and of course the script is gonna have the same command that we've put in here, but it's gonna be much better because later on we can just go ahead and do like npm run start rather than just type in this command all the time. So every single time we type this over and over again, this can become a little bit boring. Not only that, but if you have like a really long command that comes really interesting. So you can just go ahead and put in a script in here, then you can run it interesting. So save this, and here instead of doing node app.js, we can throw out npm the command line interface. We can run npm run start. So you need to supply it with the name of the script, and just run that, and it should run specifically as you expect it to be because you've put the script inside of that. So there we go. It's pretty great right now, and it works as we expect it to be. So this is how npm works, or npm scripts pretty much are working. It can automate your work, and it can make you work as smooth as possible. Now let's see something really important in Node.js ecosystem, which is a module. So a single module represents simply a normal script, which is just a JavaScript file that gets executed. By why we call it a module in the Node.js ecosystem, it basically because it can export and import other data from other modules. So this is basically why, and it is specifically contained with its own running environment, with its own variables that runs inside of it, functions and classes, everything, all the object that defined in the module stays in there until we explicitly tell it to be exporting. We will see how you can export and import in a second, but let's first discuss what is a module. Clearly seen here we've got app.js. It is a script, clearly, but when you run it using Node.js, or when you're working with this script inside of a Node.js project, it becomes a module. Simply because it has the whole environment access to the Node.js ecosystem. It has all the global variables, everything that it needs from the Node.js ecosystem, and of course it's going to be running inside of the Node.js compiler. That's why it's going to be called a module. So from now on, when you hear me calling it a module, this is basically what it is. You can have multiple modules and they can share the same data. So let's go ahead and create something in here, like calling it, I don't know, bootstrap. So this module is going to be like representing something like starting up the application and initializing some specific data for our application. So in here we can do like console log, and I can do starting up. I can do something else, don't forget, initializing rockets, whatever. So on and so forth. You can do whatever pretty much in here for the bootstrap. Just a quick example just to demonstrate what you can do with it. Now, how we can tell from the app.js, since I told you before that the app.js is the main entry point for our application, how we can tell Node.js to go ahead and grab and actually include the execution of the bootstrap.js, which is pretty much going to be throughout the require. So we're going to do require, and require, we can just go ahead and tell it which module to require, and here you just need to use the relative path, because if you just remove that, it's gonna know that this is a specific module installed as a third-party package, which we'll talk about in a second. But you need to use a relative path, just like relative to the location of the file or the module that you want to import the other module to. So just type in the name without the extension. You don't really need to put the extension in here because Node.js is smart enough to know the extension of it, and there we go. So this is all you need. Just require. It is a function. It takes this script, the file name that you want to import, which is the file name of the module, and you make sure just to put or supply it with a relative path, and everything gonna work pretty much fine. Let me just curve this out, and I can put again npm run start one more time, and we can just go ahead and start the application. And there we go. We've got hello world first, which gets imprinted out up there. Then we require this file, which pretty much just gets this file, like you can imagine it, copy the data inside of here and puts it in here. While it's not gonna do the same as I told you, just you can imagine in a file to understand how things works in here. So it just like copies the data and put it. But in the other hand, what it does, it like creates a specific environment for executing all the different things. So you don't really need to care about this. You just care how you require it and how it works. And you clearly see starting an application, and of course initializing rockets successfully. So this is how requiring another file works. Now let's say I've got some specific data inside of the bootstrap. I don't know, like the bootstrap file in here has some specific data that I need to get inside of the app.js to work with it for some reason. Not only require the bootstrap to run its own code and gets executed, no, we need to export or pretty much import some specific data from the bootstrap.js that we needed inside of the app.js module. How we can do this? So let's say I'm gonna have like a const, let's try not, or let's just go and do a const, and I can do a pets, And for the pets, it's gonna be an object, of course, gonna be like have a name. So name, I don't know, you can name something. The type of the pet is gonna be a cat, and you can put a color. So the color is actually a brown or a white cat or something like this. Anything does the job perfectly. So we've got this piece of data. It is an object, of course, that holds a specific pet, which is cat in this case. Now we want to access this data from the app.js module. How we can do so is just simply first to explicitly tell the Bootstrap.js module that we want to export this piece of data. Then from the app.js module, we tell it that we want to import a specific data from the Bootstrap.js into the current module, which is app.js, of course. So here we need to explicitly, because everything stays inside of the module unless we explicitly tell it to export a specific type of data. Not all the data is going to be exported, but only specific type of data. It's not working as JavaScript or pretty much Java or C++ when you include and import other packages or other classes from other packages and so on and so forth. It's a little bit different than that. So to do so, we need to tell it module. So we need to access the module, the current, which is a global variable that we need to access, or to pretty much say is a global objects, so a standard objects from the Node.js, and you can do export and you give it whatever you want to export in here. So we're gonna just put module.export, which is gonna be a pet, and it's gonna go ahead and export this by default, and this is called a default export. Why I'm naming it or calling it default export? Because the only thing this Bootstrap.js module is exporting is just actually a single object, which is the pets object. So whenever we try to import something from this Bootstrap, we only be able to export one single thing by default. We're not going to specify what to import, of course. We just by default get importing the pets object. So let's try this out. We export it first, then we go inside of the app.js, and once we require it, the require, if it does find anything exported inside of this file, inside of this module, what it does is just going to go ahead and return it for us. So we need to capture this just by putting it inside of a variable. I can put like a cat equals require. Then afterwards I can use a console log, and I can put a pets, and of course I can put a cat inside of this. So simple enough. Let's try to go ahead and run this by running the command again. We wait for this a little bit, and there we go. We've got initializing, starting the application. We've got our pets, which gets executed from here, and logs from the console log inside of the app.js module. We get the name Alex, like type cats, and the color, of course, is white. And we get this piece of data, but in this case we did a default export, and this is what I call a default export, because we simply just telling it to export a single object. By default in here, whenever you try to require it, we do require whatever file or module you want to require, like Bootstrap, and whenever you require it, just by default gonna return the cat. So you can't actually import, or from this specific file you can export multiple objects. So we say here we've got another object called, let me just name this a cat. So I'm gonna export in a cat, and let me just remove the type because it looks a little bit silly. I'm gonna name this a dog. Alright, so the name of the dog in here is gonna be John. I don't know, I'm not really that great of namer of things. I'm just gonna put it like this. Okay, the color of this dog is gonna be brown. And yeah, that's pretty great. Now clearing here, we got only the cat, but let's say we want to also export the dog. How we can tell it to go ahead and export the dog and the cat both at the same time? So to do so, we need to go ahead and do like module export, and we give it like an object. So you can give it an object, and you can just go ahead and export every single one of these. So you can say gonna go ahead and export me the cat, and as well gonna export me the dog. So both of these, we can just gonna put semicolon in here. Make sure just to put in an object, and just save this. Going back in here, now in this case, once we require it, by default it goes and it grabs us the whole object. Remember, it's gonna grab us the whole object that has the cat and the dog. Now this object, or this variable that we are holding inside of it, the Bootstrap exported data, which pretty much has both the cat and dog. As clearly see, whenever I hover over this, it gives me like there's a cat object and there is a dog object. So let's better name this like pets, because it has both of the objects, and you can just go ahead and console log, just save this, running this again, and this time we get both of the data exported for us. We've got the cat object and we've got also the dog objects. So this is how you can go ahead and export multiple data from a single file, and of course import it from the other file. Simple enough. And this method, what it's called, is actually named export. Why I'm calling it named export? Because throughout this you can actually access, actually from the pets object, I can just give it the name like cats, and you can access this using its own name. That's why it's called a named export, instead of the other one when you tell it just like default export. So you can't actually specify the name to export, or pretty much to access the data of, because you only got one single piece of data that is being imported. So this is mainly the major difference between named export and default export, and both they have its own user data, and you can use both of them. There's not really that much of differences or anything. They're completely the same, and they have, or they share pretty much the same things. So this is how you import and you export a specific data from one module to another, and so on and so forth. Now we've got both of these, the bootstrap and we've got the pets. Now let's move on into a little bit something deeper. So Node.js, as you can clearly see in here, it has the module and it has the exports. From where are those defined? We don't have those defined as our files. And as you know, JavaScript doesn't have some, you have to define your variable, like I say, let me equals hello or something. Then we can go ahead and access or use this variable as a string and access its own prototype functions and do some specific things with it. But in this case, we don't have this defined in our scope, at least. But it is also defined on the global scope. So we can just come over here and talk about a little bit the Node.js global scope. The global scope, what it is just like globally available for every single module that is being run by the Node.js compiler. So whenever you run the bootstrap, the app.js, any other module that is gonna be running by the Node.js compiler, clearly see in here, just running it is gonna have these global variables, and they will be able to access them as the modular, as we can have all the things like process. So throughout the process we can access also a couple of things where all of these global variables can be accessed from any module whatsoever, so without importing or exporting or anything like that. So here's a list of the available global modules on Node.js. Just in the documentation, you've got like directory name, which specifies the current executed script, the directory of it, the file name of the script, the full path pretty much. You have like clear intermediate, interval, clear timeouts, the console, the export, the global, so on and so forth. A lot of things, as well as they require, which is basically just a function that tries to import another module and execute it, or import another data that is explicitly exported from the other module into the current working module, and then so on and so forth. We can just give you an example of how things works in here. You can use all of those. So we can do, for example, console.log, and I can do path, and it can do like the current file name. So it is like double underscore and the actual file name. So just saving this, we can go ahead and run this. Where is that? 7 p.m. Run start again. There we go. We've got the path. So this is actually the path of the current working, which is right, because the bootstrap.js that has been executed. The current path of the file name is pretty much this is it, and it's pretty much the full path. If you're running Linux, you're gonna get different path, specifically like an absolute path to your machine, and so on and so forth. So this is how it works. You can also access the global variable, but in other case you want to put a global variable that is being accessed from any other module. How you can do this is actually throughout the global objects. So just type in global objects, and you can put in here, for example, put name, and you can put it like, for example, Islampinous, and something like this. Or let me just change this name. I can put Alex. It's putting the name, then by just putting a global in here, once the bootstrap.js is going to be accessing this and reading this, executing it, so later on from any other module we will be able to execute or access the name variable without importing or something like this. So in clear in here, I'm not exporting the name variable whatsoever. I'm only exporting the cat and the dog, and I can still, from the app.js, after requiring the bootstrap, of course, because I need the execution of this particular line of code, and I can go inside of this. I can go like just beneath this, and I can put just my name right? Can't spell my name. So my name is, and I can put, you can put access it from global.name, as you can clearly see, or you can just simply just put name, which is a little bit bad because you don't really want to specify these names, because you might have like in a local scope the same variable name as the current global scope. Like you have another variable called name, so you're gonna have like a confliction in here, and you don't really want to have this. So most of the times when you put global variables inside of your global objects, like make sure to find a quickest, or a name that's not gonna happen that much on your code and you don't really use it, like specific name that differentiates between a global scope and a local scope variable name. So that's pretty interesting, as well as the global variables aren't that great, aren't that good, so make sure to just use them on only rare specific scenarios when you just have to, but you don't really want to do this all the time, because importing and exporting is the best way to share data between specific modules, but the global variables are only used for a specific way, so make sure to not use it all the time. This is not great. I'm just telling you, because this is a bad habit to use global variables. Now try to do this really quick. You can go ahead and run this again, npm run start, and hopefully now we can just do this. I think for some reason it pretty much sucks or something, so I can put again running starts, and there we go. We've got my name is Alex, so we've put this inside of the bootstrap and it still gets it inside of the app.js. So this is how you share global variables between modules without explicitly requiring them and explicitly importing them into your modules. Now, how we can actually go ahead and use third-party modules or packages on the cloud, on the npm repository that other people have put in there and actually just shared with us, so how we can grab them into our projects and use them freely. So we first need to go ahead and tell Node.js which modules to firstly install. So for doing so, we need to access the terminal, and throughout the npm CLI we can just do npm install. Just by putting this command in here, it's just gonna go ahead and install the standard default modules that comes pre-installed with any Node.js project. So just doing this, by default, you're gonna grab some like file system modules, like events modules, like standard modules, only available and comes pre-installed with Node.js, of course. But if you really want to do like install another package, so for example, you want to install another third-party package that you found on the npm repository, install it and use it on your Node.js projects. So for example, I've got in here like a shulk, or pretty much whatever you spell in here. It's basically a package that allows you to colorful and add colors to your terminal, so you can instead of console log with the normal white standard color, you can go ahead and add your custom colors and print it on the console and so on and so forth, which makes it looks pretty great with an intuitive API and an easy to access standard API calls and methods. So let's say we want to install this, so you can actually check out stats like versions, the license of this, and the GitHub repository and so on and so forth. So you need just to grab in the name, and here it gives you like how to install it. So just type in npm I and the name of the package. So shulk in here, we can just go ahead and copy this. We can go npm and do shulk and just make sure to save it. So what I'm telling you with this option is to save it as a dependency. So later on, whenever someone else, like another developer, tries to install this package, or he gets a share with him, I upload this repository into GitHub, and for some reason he tries to fork it down into his local machine and tries to work with it. And how we can do this is just installing dependencies first. So whenever you save this, all the dependencies gonna be reinstalled on his machine, of course. So it's optional, so you can add it or not, and just type in this. So both the shulk is gonna be installed alongside the Node.js standard packages are also going to be installed in this. So here we find like node modules, and you're going to find a couple of things going to be installed in this, of course. So if you don't find anything installed like the events and stuff like this, you can go ahead and just do npm and install, and this should pretty much install you all the standard and the needed modules from Node.js. Now we can just go in and clear everything here. You're going to notice that node modules folder, a new folder has been created for you inside of your blog or root directory, alongside a packet-lock.json. So this has like a couple of versions of the installed installed packages on your projects for your Node.js application, and it keeps track of them. So just like something really optional, not really that much of interesting for you to take care of. Now, how we can go ahead and use chalk right now. To use chalk, we can just do a const, and we first, as required any other package, as requiring a normal modular, we can do with a third-party package as well. So here we can give it like the name. We're gonna put it inside our variable, and we can use our require function, and we give it the name. So you can clearly see it auto detects using interlicense that gives us the name of chalk in here. So just by this, we're gonna grab chalk. You can go ahead and check out the documentation, how chalk works and how you can use it. So just by requiring it in here, and you can do chalk, do whatever color, blue or red or green or whatever, then a normal string to be printed out. So just trying to do this, I clearly see using the console log in there. So we can do console log, and you can do chalk dot blue, and you can give it the string in here, colorful text or something, and you can save this. And now I can do npm run start, and this should pretty much start our this, and we've got colorful text with the blue from a third-party package that has been imported and of course installed on our machine. So there we go. This is pretty simple how you install a third-party package on your computer or on your pretty much Node.js projects, and use it on your projects and your code without any problems as a normal modular, as you're exporting and importing normal data from other modules and so on and so forth. Node.js event system and the event imager. So one of the most reasons that a lot of developers love using Node.js for specifically for their own servers and APIs, for creating all of different things, considering their server infrastructure and the backend and everything, is the Node.js built-in event loop. So it allows you actually smoothly to emit and add listeners to the event really quickly without any problems, any events, and very quickly with a performance friendly, events friendly system, running up in a single thread that allows you to emit any events you want with any data you want to pass into the event listener. And you can also have as many listeners for a single event as you want on the event stack. So let's just go ahead and try to say, but with a quick example on the event system and how it works. So there's one module called events. You should have probably installed this. You can go and check it out in the Node module. You're going to find a lot of things in here. It should be installed here. So I'm going to just go ahead and do the event imager. And what does this module does is actually a standard module from Node.js, and it allows you to add listeners for a specific event, and pretty much clearly see in here we just require events, and we say the event imager, and there we go. This is simply all you need to do. Now we can go ahead, for example, we got that in the app.js, but what I really want to do is go inside here. I'm gonna just try to change the structure a little bit to make it a little bit more professional. It looks like a real world Node.js application. If you want to distribute it to GitHub or share it with your team or something, you add the src folder where all the things are going to happen. We leave the app.js out there because it's going to be the main entry point. Then from the app.js we can require the bootstrap.js. So let me just go ahead and move on this one inside of here, and inside of the src2 I'm going to create something like new folder, and I'm gonna create like games folder. So let's say we're gonna simulate some kind of a game or a gaming server or something like this. Whenever any user or a new gamer that pretty much joins to the server, he says, hello new user, you've just like joined, and so on and so forth. So just like a quick example like this, just to visualize it in your head and how it works. I'm gonna add a new one. I'm just gonna say let's say this is gonna be game number 1. So just a quick example, just say you've got Rocket League in here, or Call of Duty, or Apex Legends, or whatever game you pretty much like to play. There we go, we've got this in here. Now instead of the bootstrap, I'm just gonna go and really just simply go games and grab the first game, just require it so the code can be executed really quickly. This is simply what I want to do, but I want to copy also the code in here, and simply in here, just gonna go ahead and require the bootstrap. So go inside of the src and go with the bootstrap. So most of the times you're going to need the src folder inside of your Node.js projects, because this is what most of the developers like and work with. So yeah, it's pretty great. You can also change the name of this to library and make it pretty suitable. Now inside of the game, or pretty much the bootstrap, I'm gonna have like event image here, so create an instance in here, or pretty much just requiring it. Now we can go ahead and create like an instance of it. So this is pretty much a class. You can take it as an object. So we need to initialize this and create an instance. I'm gonna do like a const, and I'm gonna do like event imager with a lowercase e at the beginning, and I'm gonna create an instance by new event imager, and the instance is just gonna put a constructor in there. So simple enough. It's just by creating an instance, nothing really complicated. Now what I want to share this instance, because we're gonna use this instance to either submit or dispatch new events with the specific data that we want to dispatch, like random data or something. And also we can add listeners for a specific event on the event stack. So we always need this listener to work pretty much fine. You can have multiple listeners, but they're not gonna have the same contacts working with their events, so they separately have their own events and stuff like this. So here we've got the require. What I want to do inside of the game, I'm gonna do modular.export, and this is where pretty much you can export like, you know, a function. It works like as a constructor, so I'm just gonna go and export a function normally, and here we're gonna be an anonymous function. So whenever we run this, we can run it as a function, so we can pass in like, you know, two parentheses to make it work as a function. Since the require, what it's going to return is actually the function reference in here, then we can execute the function by just doing the two parentheses, as you know, executing any other normal JavaScript function or something. And what I want to do here is just capture the reference of the event imager, which is in this case I'm going to pass it through from the bootstrap.js. So simple enough. I just need this event imager to work with it and stuff like this. Now what I'm gonna do down here, let's say like new user joined the server. So, and this user of course is gonna be a gamer, because we are running a game server or something like this. So let's say this new user has joined the server. What I'm gonna do is dispatch a new event, or pretty much emit a new event, telling our application somewhere else is listening for that particular event that a new user or a new gamer has joined the server room. So you can just like send him back a response saying hello world, or you know, welcome to our game server or something like this, or you can send him a list of instructions, whatever the hell you want to do. Alright, so I'm gonna do an event emit. There's like a plethora of functions in here you can do, or methods you can access through the instance you created, but we only need the emit, which pretty much takes two parameters. The first one is the event name, so you're gonna have like a unique key name for each event you register, so later on you can access it by, you know, emitting to it, or you can simply just add listeners for it. So you always need to keep up the name here. Let's say like new user, and this is the name of the event pretty much, and we can pass in whatever arbitrary data I can hear the argument. So you can pass in whatever, like objects, arrays, any other type of data you would like pretty much to pass in through. So let's say we're gonna pass in the username of the new person who has joined in our game server. Let's say it's gonna be like Alex DC or something, just a random username, and this data is gonna be passed to whatever listener he's listening for the event named new user. So now we need to save this in Bootstrap. Remember, we've passed in the events imager in here. Now inside the game.js in here, we can do whatever logic it takes, but we can go ahead and listen for an event. So whenever a new user like registers or pretty much access our server and joins in, we're gonna emit the event called new user with specific data, which is the username of the person who has joined in. Then later on we can add the listener in here. Whenever this event is being emitted, is pretty much just the listener gonna run and it's gonna be executed. So this is how the event loop works, just by emitting and you know, emitting pretty much events and adding listeners for that specific event, so you can dispatch back and forth data between them and add listeners, of course. So this is the whole Nodejs architecture. The event loop and stuff like this works behind the scenes, and also you can have use it throughout the event imager class. Here I'm going to use the events imager again, and I'm going to use this. I'm going to do the on method, and the on method in here takes two parameters too. The first one, which is the event key name, which you always need, as I've told you before, so the new user event's name. The second thing, it takes the function that gets executed once this event is being emitted. So I'm going to put the function in here. You can use a normal function, or you can use an async arrow functions, pretty much the same. So you should know that this is an arrow function. You can just replace it by a normal function, regular JavaScript functions, nothing really special about this. And how we can receive this data or accept and get the data that's passed in from the emission is pretty much you can pass it through the argument. So whatever data in here, let's say you've put the first one in here, you can put like 2, 5 in here, and you put like 10, whatever. You can just get them by the first one, the same order you put it in here. You're gonna put them in here like 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much all you need. I'm gonna reference the username, and simply what I'm gonna do is use the console log. And one thing in here, I'm gonna just go ahead and try to use chalk. So I'm gonna do const chalk in here, and I'm gonna pretty much require the chalk library really quick, just to print out a really decent nice. So I'm gonna do green, alright, and new user has joined the game 1 room, alright, and you can put the username of that to make sure that the data is being passed in correctly. So once we emit the events, this listener is going to be running and perfectly for our things. We're going to just need the bootstrap, and of course the bootstrap is being required in here. So now whenever we try to run our server, of course it's going to be auto emitted. So whenever we execute the code, it's going to emit this, and the listener of here is going to be running. So we don't really need to interact or something, but you can imagine this like having a server or something. As you can clearly see, we've got new user has joined in the game 1 room from Alex DC. So remember, with the Alex DC, we've been passing it from here, and we are pretty much getting it inside of here on the actual function that we're passing, the listener pretty much for the events new user. So this is basically how it works, how the events emitter. Of course, you can go ahead and check out the other methods available inside of that. So the events emitter has a plethora of methods that you can use on your application for emitting, listening events, removing listeners, adding listeners, and doing way much better stuff and complicated and advanced stuff. But this is basically how it works. And this is how you can add events and work or manipulate events on your Node.js projects or pretty much application. And one of the most important modules for Node.js is actually dealing or manipulating the file system throughout the FS module, which is also a standard module that comes pre-installed with any Node.js projects pretty much. You can also go ahead and install it custom, by yourself manually, but it comes pre-installed, of course. So you can just go and require this really quick, just doing the FS system, and you require the FS. So just like in a variable, you're gonna have like both of methods. Allows you pretty much to manipulate the file system of any platform you're running on, like Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X. You can read through your file system, write file system, and pretty much do a lot of other things that you can do in pretty much other languages. For example, you deal with C++ or C, you're gonna need a couple of lines to take care of that. But with Node.js, just like a method, and since it's asynchronous, so you have like this non-blocking file system thing. You can of course run the synchronous methods of file system, but that's pretty much takes the whole joy of using Node.js and the whole point of it. So it's pretty much useless, but in some scenarios it becomes really helpful. So you need to take a look on all of that. I really advise you to just go ahead and check out the documentation, because you're gonna find everything there available, all the methods and parameters and stuff like this about the functions. So I'm gonna do the file system, and there we go. It grabs us like a list of available methods inside of that. There's a plethora of them, but what we need is in here, let's say like a new user has been joined in, and we emitted this event, we got this listener running and gets executed. So once this new user has joined in our server, we want to go ahead and write like a new message to our file telling him a new user has been joined, and created the file in our projects in here. So we can do this throughout the write file method. So the write file method in here, a path to the file, if the URL is provided, it must use the file. So you can use a file that's clear, see it's asynchronous. It takes the path in here. The second thing, it takes a data. You can pass in whatever data. It can be binary data, a buffer, or pretty much a normal string data, which is much like a buffer. And the last parameter it takes is pretty much the callback with an error. So if there's any errors happening along the way, it's gonna throw up an exception, and you're gonna have the error objects with the error data inside of it. Otherwise, the error object gonna be null, and everything gonna be working pretty much fine. So remember, this is pretty much asynchronous. I can give it a path, but in this case it doesn't take a relative path. So it doesn't take, like for example, we are inside of the game.js, so we say the same direction as game.js created us a file called users.txt or something like this, and it creates for us. So we need an absolute path like C, documentations, or pretty much documents, C users, IPNOS documents, and source, and our Node.js app folder and stuff like this. This is pretty much how it works, and we can go ahead and use the help of a module also called path, which is also a standard module from Node.js. So the path module here, we can quickly go ahead and grab it. We can just get this path, and this one, it converts us. You can give it a relative path, and it gives us pretty much an absolute path. So this is pretty much all it does. It generates this for us, and we can do this really quick in here. So we can create like a const. I can do users file path, and we can use the path module as I've said, and you can use the resolve method, which pretty much you give it a relative path and it returns to you an absolute path. So this is all we need. I can just go back once, and after going back once, you can go outside the src, and I'm gonna create a folder in here called logs or something, just a quick thing, and I'm gonna go inside of logs, and inside of logs I'm gonna create a file called something like users.txt. so whenever a user gets joined in our game server, we're gonna write his username and the date of the joining into this particular file. So simple enough. So we need to get that. Clearly seen here, as I've told you, it returns a string which is representing the absolute path of our file, and here we can just go ahead and supply it to us. I'm gonna do users file path. The second thing it takes is pretty much the data. So the data, I'm gonna say user name, and I'm gonna use like string literals, which you can pretty much include variables inside of it using the syntax by just giving it $, and a curly braces. Then you can give it the name of the variable you want to embed inside of that. So I'm gonna do username, and new username at, so let's say new user with username joined. Alright, so joined at, and I'm just gonna give it the date in here. So I'm just gonna do new date, and you're gonna grab us the date of the joining of the user. And this is pretty much also available on Node.js, which is the date object or a date class that gives you the dates, and you can manipulate different aspects of your dates, like months and years and stuff like this, and pretty much the time too. So yeah, this is also a global variable, as we'll speak about this in the global sections. And there we go. So the last thing it takes in here is pretty much the callback that's gonna return. So as told you, it takes an error, and we need to make sure that if there's any errors along the way, what we can do is just like stop the execution. And how can I stop the execution? Just by doing console.error, and I say cannot write to file. And just like this, I'm gonna return in here to stop the execution. Otherwise, what I'm gonna do is just like do console.log, and I'm also gonna use chalk.green. So I'm gonna do go, and I'm gonna get rid of this completely right now because this is what I want. I can also go in and use chalk in here, so that becomes a little bit better somehow, because we can use some colors, and that can help the user experience to be enhanced a little bit. And I can give it in here like red. There we go. So it's simple enough. Once the file is gonna be registered and write the new user to it, we gonna pretty much have everything in here. The callback gonna be executed, and you're gonna have like console log, a couple of things to our log or to our terminal. We can save this, and we can run our code one more time, and to make sure that everything pretty much works fine. As you can clearly see in here, it throws an error whenever it tries to not find the file, and this is pretty obvious because we don't have this path in here, because this path is actually available. So the resolve method, what it does, it pretty much goes and looks for files depending on the root path. So we start looking from the root projects, the root path of your projects, and you start looking for this project. So we can't just use this. I just wanted to show you this, guys, because to show the actual error in here and how it works, and if the error is going to be available. So once the error is available, it's going to just throw out this, and also the error in here going to have a couple of information like the stack trace and the whole exception details about this particular error. So I'm going to have this resolve Now it should pretty much work. So just go ahead and looks for the logs, and pretty much it just like, you know, creates the user.txt and some of that. It's gonna try to save this. Let me clear this really quick. So I'm gonna run the start in here and wait a little bit, and there we go. We got new user has joined in the game one room AlexDC. So this is being executed for us and, you know, logged to the terminal. We can just go and take a look on the logs. We got a new file created for us, which is user.txt, and it has pretty much all the details we want. New user with the username AlexDC joined at blah blah blah, the whole date and time of the user joining. That's pretty much it. So you can use the file system. There's a plethora of other methods that you can use throughout the file system in here. So just do FC and you can check out the whole available pretty much methods and how you can use them, with just a little bit of snippets and documentation and guide how you can use that. But it's better to take a look on the official documentation for Node.js. And the last thing we want to cover in this particular video tutorial is pretty much how to create a simple and a very basic HTTP server. So we're gonna just take the basic and the bare minimum Node.js HTTP module and try to create a very simple server that returns a hello world without using any other frameworks like Express or something, because that pretty much the Express.js needs on itself a completely separate video tutorial from scratch just to learn it all. So I'm just gonna do something really simple without this. So we first need to go ahead and install npm install HTTP. Of course, this one comes pre-installed sometimes with Node.js, which is a standard module too, so it doesn't just go ahead and install as a normal third-party module. So I'm gonna grab this, just require it really quick to do HTTP, require HTTP. And the second thing we're gonna need is a port. So every server on the whole world pretty much needs to be running on a port, and most of the times when you see like facebook.com, google.com or something, they will be running on the 80 port, which is the default port. But in our case, we can't use the 80 port because it's being taken by web browser and other applications, so we need to use another port for development only. So I'm going to create a port in here. I'm just going to put it uppercase to make sure that it's going to be a const and to differentiate between stuff. I'm just going to put the 3000 port in here, which is not being taken by any other application we know or something. So also the other thing, now we need to create an instance of the HTTP server. So I'm going to do an application and I'm going to create this throughout the HTTP and do server. So this one is going to be constructor. It's gonna, you can give it a request to listener or something, but you don't really need that. Just use something really basic. And of course, it's going to be returning us the server, which is an instance application of our server, so we can access and do requests on it. Now, whenever a new user is going to submit a request, which means he wants to access our server or pretty much our website through a web browser, so he goes, for example, ipnews.com, and so what we need is pretty much whenever we receive a request, an HTTP request from the user, we're going to send him back a response. So to do so, we're going to do up.on, and we need to listen for events, and there is like a plethora of events in here like connection and stuff, but we need the request event. So whenever a request is being saved or sent to our server, we need to send a response back. The second it takes in here is a function, so you can use normal functions or row functions, which takes the request and the response as parameters. So you can respond with them and you know, access some specific data. The request is going to have like very specific data on the request came from the user or any other you know, third-party module or something made the request, the HTTP request. So it's going to have data like the HTTP method, some body data or query data that's being sent throughout the request or alongside the request pretty much, and a couple of other things. The response here, you can send data to it, you can set headers for the response. Is going to be sent back to the user, which is of course an HTTP response. And what we want in here, just something really simple. I'm going to access the response, and I'm going to do write head. So here we're going to write like a simple header for our HTTP response, and I'm going to put like 200, which is the 200 HTTP status, and here I'm going to put a content type. So I'm going to just put a header for our HTTP method. If you're not familiar with that, you definitely need to just go ahead and check it out, because you know, we're not going to cover all the different things, just how to create a server and a basic one using Node.js. I'm going to just create a text and or pretty much send back a plain text in here, The second thing, now we need to send the actual response, or write some data to the body of the response. And we're gonna do write, and I'm just gonna simply write hello world. And lastly, to send this response that you've prepared in here, you firstly added some headers to it with a specific, like, response status, and you've added some data to the body. Now we need to send the response and tell it to be sent back to the user who has sent it first. So I'm gonna do response dot end. So the end method, what it does, it just like ends the request, and or pretty much ends the processing time, or pretty much the processing thing that's going on your server, and it sends back the response, the final response back to the user. So this is simply all you need, and whenever we receive a request, a new one, this is going to be sent back. Now the last thing is we need to run our server throughout the application, so we need to listen on a specific port, which is the port up there, and I can have like a function that's going to be running in here. So a callback, once we run the server, whether there's an error or something, we will be just like checking it out. So I'm gonna just make sure to check if there's any errors. What I'm gonna do is console dots error. You can use chalk in here, but just use it simply. I'm gonna do could not start server, and we can console log the error. Just gonna return just to stop the execution. And the other thing in here, if everything works pretty much fine, no errors, nothing at all, you can just do console.log, and server is listening on, and it's going to be listening on localhost, so HTTP localhost, and the port in here is just going to be concatenated, which is the port that we provided, which is 3000 ports. So we can save this, and we can just go in and run our server really quick. I can do npm run start, and of course it's gonna start application. There we go. I've got servers listing on HTTP localhost 3000. If you try to open up throughout a browser, this is what we get. So we access through localhost 3000. The browser, of course, is going to be sending a get HTTP request to the server, and we are going to get the response back. So we get hello world, the same thing that we have put it right over here, just as we send it here. You can send whatever data, but this is just a very basic server, nothing really complicated. You can send queries in here, you can send post HTTP methods, manipulate all the different things, middlewares and view systems and stuff like this, but all of those are very advanced and very kind of complicated. So I just want to cover that for guys. And so yeah, this is pretty much it. This is for the Nodejs course series, or pretty much the from scratch video tutorial to master and learn Nodejs for beginners. So thank you guys for watching. I really hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did enjoy really that much, make sure to smash that like button, and of course don't forget the subscribe button to get much more tutorials. Of course, you can check out our other tutorials on the channel. There's a plethora of them: web development, Node.js, React, Angular, and so on and so forth. And we're very happy to check this out. Also, make sure to take a look on the documentation if you want to access this code, and on GitHub pretty much, and access the repository. Nonetheless, you can go ahead and also check out the ipnews.com, which is gonna have pretty much our website or learning platform, which has a lot of video tutorials written and video tutorials in here, with a lot of things that's gonna happen in here with high quality content. So make sure to go in and check it out. It's also gonna be creating a new website for the platform and stuff like this. Thank you guys for watching. As I said again, I hope you all enjoyed, and I see you all hopefully in another video tutorial.